What is up, guys? You are tuned into the Casual Wrestling SmackDown Post Show. I am NerdyD. If you're listening to this, you are part of the CWC, and this is the show where we join together to ask and answer the biggest questions coming out of Friday Night SmackDown this week. This show's coming to you a couple days later because of NXT No Mercy. We'll talk about that tonight. But before we get into that, do me a little favor, tap the like button. It only takes 2 seconds, and it lets YouTube know that you are listening and watching the casual wrestling content as we continue to try to chip away at the IWC stronghold over online wrestling conversation. Let's jump right into it this week. Let's start off by talking about Friday Night SmackDown. More importantly, kind of the big thing that's going on SmackDown right now, and that is John Cena, the Bloodline, and LA Knight kind of coming together for ultimately the main event of WWE Fastlane. And by jumping onto the internet and kind of taking a litmus test of what the people think about this, it's pretty obvious to me after reading, Reddit and Twitter and Instagram that the IWC is attempting to mock this main event as far as WWE goes. And I find that to be a little bit interesting. I don't know what you expect for a September, October premium live event from WWE. This is probably as good as we can expect and probably better than what we deserve as far as WWE goes. This has been set up the exact way I would have set this up to hold us over until we get to Roman Reigns returning. This new version of Jim Uso, this new cocky, kind of almost mimicking the tribal chief, Jim Uso. I'm here for all of this. There's a possibility that sneakily, out of all of this bloodline stuff, we somehow came out with Jimmy Uso being the true MVP and the real shining star of the bloodline. Jay's doing his thing on Monday Night Raw, no complaints there. Roman will come back and be Roman Reigns. Paul Heyman is Paul Heyman. Solo Sikoa will prove himself ultimately, but I think Jimmy Uso has been the biggest surprise coming out of the bloodline. But the IWC continues to mock this story. The IWC continues to talk down on this like this isn't an October premium live event. Like John Cena and LA Knight in a tag team against the bloodline, it is not a premium event. That's as good as it gets. And let's be clear. Y'all heard the pop on Friday. LA Knight is that guy. LA Knight is a big deal. When it was LA Knight's music that hit to help John Cena, there wasn't disappointment from the fans. I think there's a certain level of audience, casual audience especially, that thought it was going to be The Rock. They expected it was going to be the Cena and The Rock coming to take down the bloodline. But ultimately, I think, we knew that this was LA Knight's moment, and LA Knight came out and he delivered, and the crowd was there for it. I don't know what the IWC really wants to see at this point. I don't know what they're expecting from WWE. WWE is building stars. LA Knight is a star. This is everything you could ask for in October for a premium live event that is essentially a throwaway event. We've talked about this, guys. WWE and Triple H are not putting the emphasis into these premium live events that they used to. So when you get a match that is put together, that has a little bit of storytelling, that is cohesive, we have to learn to appreciate this. But here's the bigger question. That's the main event. John Cena, LA Knight, the bloodline, tag team. Does Roman come back? So I get the feeling that, having not seen Roman in a while, there is a chance that Roman Reigns shows up at Fastlane and attacks LA Knight. I think this is the beginning of the LA Knight Roman Reigns story that we kind of wished upon ourselves. We thought this could happen, and now it's happening. And I'm all about that. I love the idea of, at Crown Jewel, We get LA Knight versus Roman Reigns for the WWE Undisputed Championship. Let's book it. I think that's a big deal for LA Knight. I know some will see it as just another stepping stone for Roman Reigns, but I don't see it like that. I don't see it. I see it as an opportunity for LA Knight to stand in front of Roman Reigns and show that he is on that same level, and show that when the time comes and Roman Reigns drops that title, that LA Knight will be a worthy, deserving superstar to hold on to that title. What else happened on SmackDown? The women's division. So the last couple weeks, I have spit nothing but praise for the SmackDown's women division. And of course, what do? But they make, just this insane, crazy left turn right before Fastlane. And they throw us this stitched together piecemeal piece of shit title match that makes absolutely no sense as far as booking goes. This is when the IWC speaks up, and I have to just bite my tongue, because this type of booking doesn't make sense to me. You have spent the last 3 or 4 weeks explaining and treating us to Asuka and Io Sky in what seemed like was going to be a dream story. And you allowed us to see it one time on Friday Night SmackDown, and it didn't end up being exactly what we thought or wanted it to be. And in true WWE fashion, they're going to panic. They're going to take that little hammer and break glass in case of an emergency, and they're going to throw Charlotte Flair into this title match because they don't think that Asuka and Io Sky can get this done. But my question is, why not allow them to fail? Why not allow Asuka and Io Sky to go out there in a premium live event setting, let them keep the pace of that match where it needs to be, and allow them to just fail? I don't understand why we have to throw Charlotte Flair in there to kind of build up the excitement. I think people are plenty excited for Asuka and Io Sky. In the last couple of weeks, you have sold us on that as the story we are watching. So to all of a sudden do this only leads to one conclusion as far as I'm concerned, and that is WWE does not have faith in Asuka, and they do not have faith in Io Sky as a champion, and they now view Io Sky as a failed women's champion. I believe that 100%. I think that TKO has come in and take over. I think that Vince McMahon is beginning to have a bigger say-so in what's going on. And I think that Triple H's little NXT darlings like Io Sky are going to feel the pressure. They're going to feel that thumb begin to squeeze down on top of them. And they're going to have to produce results. And so I think you can probably blame Vince McMahon for this. But Vince McMahon coming in and breaking glass in case of emergency and going back to the tried and true Charlotte Flair, that's a Vince McMahon thing. And I think I would believe that there is probably some disagreements in the back right now as far as the kind of the layout and the landscape of the women's division on SmackDown, because for the last couple of weeks, I have praised, this has been the bright spot as far as Triple H's booking goes. But I will say, ultimately, I will say that Asuka and Io Sky match did not deliver on SmackDown last week or 2 weeks ago. And so I have to say, if I'm Vince McMahon, I do understand breaking that glass. I do understand the slight bit of panic. I think WWE is going to have to reel this in and figure out what it wants to be in the next couple of weeks. Are we going back to the Vince McMahon style of these premium live events need to be premium? Or are we going to stick with the Triple H, these premium live events can be a little bit experimental? It'll be interesting to see who the push and pull, the tug, the give and release there of who ultimately will win that decision-making position, whatever. The United States Championship. This is another issue I have with SmackDown this week is there's obviously something going on between Vince McMahon and Triple H. It's obvious at this point that the push and pull is real. This is not rumor. It's not speculation. You see it in the ability to ask the question, why does WWE keep abandoning these stories that we probably knew weren't going to work from the jump off? And I think the answer to that is because you have Triple H who starts these experimental stories, and you have Vince McMahon who's coming in and he's cutting the head off of anything he thinks is not going to be successful. Point an example here. The confusing booking of the United States Championship for the last month and a half. So we get the title off of Austin Theory, who did absolutely nothing with it, and we put it on to Rey Mysterio with this idea that this is probably leading to what? Santos Escobar heel turn. And so for the next couple of weeks, we get this kind of flip-flopping of storytelling where Santos really respects Rey Mysterio, but maybe there's hints of dissension. We're building towards this match one-on-one respect for the United States Championship. And then ultimately, what does it pan out to? But it pans out to 2 pretty clean losses for Santos Escobar. And I don't love that. I don't think that's the right booking decision. I think that what happened is there was the plan to ultimately have Santos Escobar win the United States Championship. And I think at some point someone stepped up and said, scrap that. That's not working. Nobody's interested. Let's throw the Street Profits into this thing and let's make it interesting. I now think the plan, once again, Vince McMahon has stepped up. I believe now the plan is for Montez Ford to win the United States Championship. And I'm not mad at it. I will tell you, I tend to side with the more Vince McMahon style of booking. I just don't like that we spent the last 3 or 4 weeks building Santos Escobar, building the LWO, trying to elevate the United States Championship to just come to a complete stop, take a 360 and go, let's just throw all these guys together at Fastlane. I understand what's happening. I ultimately hope this is not Bobby Lashley being booked back into the United States Championship picture, because I think that's absolutely stupid. But I do like the idea, if we're just cutting ties, if United States Championship, bad story, if they're going to kind of shut down the LWO, because ultimately the LWO outside of Santos Escobar and Rey Mysterio, there's not a lot going on there. If we're going to turn the page and we're going to start the era of Montez Ford, I'm all for it. But what I'm not for is these start and stop stories that they try to get us invested into, but ultimately they ultimately just leave us hanging. And so the question has to be asked. You leave wreckage in your path when you do things like this. And so you have to ask questions like, do multiple losses to Rey Mysterio, can Santos Escobar bounce back from that? You know, you have to ask questions like, the logic of Bobby Lashley was mad at the Street Profits last week, but all it takes is for them to come out post-match and attack the LWO, and that's all he wanted to see from them. These kind of booking decisions, they play with our intelligence, and I don't love them. And I have to ask the question. Bobby Lashley is an extremely intimidating person, but he does nothing for himself when he comes out to the ring dressed like the world's biggest Hogwarts professor. What the fuck was he wearing? Like that wasn't a suit jacket. That was more like a wizard's cloak. Lots of stuff. SmackDown has tended to be the show that I enjoy watching, but this last week really felt like they just hit the brakes, spun around, did a 360, and it does feel like at this point in time, I ultimately believe SmackDown may be under Vince McMahon's control. Now, last topic this week, let's talk about WWE or NXT No Mercy, because that's something that happened yesterday, and I saw a lot of people overreacting to what they saw on NXT last night. So Dominic Mysterio lost his NXT World Championship. And I saw a lot of people freaking out about this. It's funny. It's so funny to me how the IWC can go from 1 week ago saying that Dominic Mysterio is the new crowned WWE future champion to, oh my God, he lost the NXT Championship. They're burying Dom. We don't have to jump to 2 different extremes when we talk about Dominic Mysterio. It is okay for it just to be time for his title run to be over. That title was just locked up on the main roster. It served its purpose. It gave Dominic Mysterio a little bit of credibility. It allowed him to carry around a championship, and it is better suited back in NXT. The right man won that match last night. And stop overreacting to this. Dominic Mysterio will be just fine on the main roster without a title. He will get the same reactions from the crowd. He can play the same part with Rhea Ripley. This absolutely means nothing. But if you look at the IWC, they are now completely burying Dominic Mysterio, and it's an unfair overreaction. It's sad that 1 week I have to tell the IWC, calm down, don't crown Dominic Mysterio the next big thing. And now it's this week I'm having to tell the IWC, hey guys, he's gonna be okay. Don't bury him just yet. But this is what the IWC does. This is what the internet wrestling community does. And I saw something last night that I absolutely, I know I'm going to be the bad guy when I talk about this. But this is something that has to be talked about. There was a large group of people, IWC, even some casual fans, who I've seen overreact to what happened last night as far as the two main events go, talking about those NXT No Mercy matches being match of the year in all of professional wrestling. And so I'm going to take heat for this. I get it, but this is my honest opinion. Like it, hate it, I don't care. You can come after me for it. But here's the truth. This Carmelo Hayes Dragunov match, it's only as good as it is because it's on NXT. That is not a main event of a main roster WWE premium live event. Now, people are going to hate hearing that, but that is the truth. That match works in front of 5,000 fans. NXT crowd. And this is not, I don't want to take away from that match. I watched the match. It was absolutely fire, but it's not match of the year. You got to quit with that. It's not the match of the year. It's a big difference in getting 5,000 people behind you and getting 25,000 people behind you. And it's got to be talked about. If we're going to talk about these matches, we have to be fair. This was a 5'9" guy against a 5'10" guy, and that's not main roster premium live event material. You can't tell me that Dragunov can put on that same kind of match in the ring with a Roman Reigns or a Drew McIntyre. It's not the same. Because when we start doing this, this is when the WWE audience becomes very unfair to the AEW audience. Because if we start doing this, then we have to start taking these AEW main events serious. And I won't take them serious because I don't take 5'9" versus 5'10" guys. You can't rank those matches on the same level as 6'5" and 6'6" behemoths and monsters in the ring. It just doesn't work that way. It's like ranking. It's like comparing guys who play in a 6 foot and under basketball league. Those guys don't have the same. There's not the same level of energy that you get in the NBA. That's just reality. It's like comparing a Division II national championship game to an NBA Finals game. That match last night was great. That match last night, NXT match of the year. I'm all for it. You want to call it that? Let's call it that. What we're not going to call it is the pro wrestling match of the year. We're not going to Dave Meltzer this thing. And I'm going to take heat for this. People are going to get mad. They're going to try to convince me otherwise. It's not going to happen. It's not meant to take away from what we saw. It's just meant to put in perspective what we saw. It's meant to put into perspective that situation, location, and capacity of that building all matter when we talk about what is match of the year, because we have to be careful. Now we're going to start including YMCA matches and matches at your local church. It does matter. Both were great matches. I liked both of them. I thought Tiffany Stratton did absolutely fantastic and showed she can hang with Becky Lynch. I thought Carmelo Hayes and Dragunov were absolutely fantastic, but neither one is match of the year. And here's a little secret that I think it's a little bit of a behind the scenes that people don't understand as far as storytelling goes, and that is the advantage that NXT allows for wrestlers and for storytelling, and that is NXT allows for finality. Whereas main roster WWE does not allow for finality. And I'll explain what that means. What that means is when a guy like Carmelo Hayes is coming to the end of his NXT run, it's kind of widely accepted that he's going to lose a big match. So he loses this match, and there's kind of the passing of the guard as far as the title goes, and there's a very feel-good moment that comes out of that. And because it's NXT, because we know Carmelo's going to move on to bigger things, we don't hold that loss against Carmelo Hayes the way we would against somebody on the main roster. When you're on the main roster and you're in a premium live event and you lose in the main event, that affects your stock. You then have to show up on Monday night and explain why you couldn't get it done. Carmelo Hayes is not going to have to face that. NXT allows for this finality that WWE main roster doesn't allow for. And it allows for these events to have these big kind of finality, final fight moments. And it's not fair to call that match of the year because of the finality of it. You cannot replicate that on the main roster. And maybe that's the bigger question that needs to be asked is why does WWE protect everybody on the main roster and not book like more like NXT, which I'll have that conversation with you. I think that's a fair conversation to have at this point is if we just allowed some guys to lose and have their status lowered, it would create more parity and better storytelling on the main roster. But as far as WWE goes right now, they're not able to do that kind of finality the way NXT does. And for that reason, once again, it just, to me, it puts a ceiling on where an NXT match can be considered, match of the year. But if you have to be realistic, was that match better than Roman Reigns and Sami Zayn this year at Elimination Chamber? There's no way, man. You had 25,000 people going absolutely insane for Sami Zayn. It's just not, it's great. It was great, but it's not that. It's not that. That's main roster great. Was it better than Rhea Ripley and Charlotte Flair, which stole the show at WrestleMania? No, it wasn't. It's not. So it wasn't. Tiffany and Becky Lynch was not better. And Carmelo Hayes and Dragunov was not better. And you have to, it wasn't even better than Gunther and Chad Gable from Monday Night Raw a couple weeks ago. So I get it. We can overreact all we want. We just have to be careful when we start throwing around. I see people, I'm okay. If you want to say that's a match of the year contender, that's fine. You could say that because we say that about a lot of things. But when I start seeing people throw out definitive, no, that was match of the year, don't talk about anything else, that bothers me a little bit because that's not what it was. The only thing coming out of NXT that the questions I need answered are, what's next for Carmelo Hayes? Can he piggyback off of the success of this title run and jump into the main roster and be effective? Or is he going to fall victim to the same thing that happens to all of these NXT guys where they just come into the main roster and all of that energy and momentum is just halted? I think Carmelo's going main roster. I'm not so sure about Tiffany Stratton. I don't know if she's ready for the big show quite yet. I think there may be still some polishing to do as far as her character, but I think she ultimately showed she can stand, if you can stand in the ring one-on-one with Becky Lynch, I think you can stand in the ring pretty much with any other female superstar. Let's talk about a little news. Shawn Michaels says, of course he would welcome CM Punk into NXT. Why wouldn't you? I mean, once again, all of these IWC people who try to label CM Punk a cancer, you see openly these big prominent names within WWE or within wrestling going, we would welcome him back. Shawn Michaels' only problem is it's not his decision. But I don't think that TKO has any real issue with CM Punk. Like, I think if you sit down, I have not heard Dana White say anything negative about CM Punk other than he shouldn't have been fighting in UFC. But you don't hear Dana White talk about CM Punk's character in any kind of negative fashion. So I don't think that TKO is going to see CM Punk as this big problem that AEW, tried to make him out to be, and maybe that even Triple H has with him. I think ultimately, when it comes to what's best for business, I think a lot of higher ups are going to start saying things like, let's bring him back and give him an opportunity. The television show Heels is seeking a new network after the Stars Network canceled the show. Here's the problem. The problem with wrestling television is if it's not comedy, most people aren't going to tune in. I think Heels was a good show. It was a good show. It wasn't great. It had its ups. It had its downs. I think that it fell victim of trying to play too long of a storytelling game. But it also fell victim to Stars being bought by Lionsgate, then Stars thinking that the only show it can promote is Power, to then the writer's strike not allowing those actors to promote the show. That really fucks up your ability to be successful. But ultimately, it feels like a show that could find a home on Netflix or find a home on Hulu or something like that. So, I'm rooting for it, but it's not that big of a deal that it got canceled. Back to Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels addresses Gable Stevenson's status in NXT. Shawn Michaels says Stevenson has other commitments currently. I don't think that's what this is. I think that's bullshit. I think the truth about Gable Stevenson right now is they brought him out at Great American Bash thinking he was going to be a big deal. The crowd was going to get behind him. He was going to be the next Kurt Angle. And all of a sudden, he was the one man in professional wrestling that could get everybody cheering for Baron Corbin. And that's what happened. And so they had to go back to the drawing board. I don't think there's any real issue here. I think they went back and they're going to have to reassess how do we repackage him as a heel, because it's obvious that the crowd is not going to get behind him. And so I think Shawn Michaels has a little bit of work to do as far as just repackaging Gable Stevenson. And that's if they even really want to fuck with that. I think there's always a possibility they turn him loose and let him do and work the other commitments that he has. And last story of the week is Kenny Omega calls out toxic wrestling fans following Jade Cargill leaving AEW. This makes me laugh. This is the shit that makes me laugh. This is the stuff that ultimately that you put a target on your back. When you become the ultimate hypocrite, when you sit around and you create unhealthy work environments for people within your company. And then you have guys like Kenny Omega, or you have Nick Jackson, who comes out and starts attacking fans on Twitter because someone called him a cancer to the wrestling world. And Nick Jackson comes out and says, I'm not a cancer because I employ so many people. Let's not, you can muddy the water all you want, Nick Jackson, Kenny Omega, but here's the reality. You guys only employ people to benefit yourself. I guarantee you, the minute you guys are done with AEW, you don't give two shits about who works in that company and what happens to any of those people. You guys have proven that it is all about you and your little friend's crew. You will do and use anybody to achieve ultimately what you want to achieve as far as pro wrestling goes. And I call bullshit. You guys aren't happy for Jade Cargill. You guys aren't excited to go see her be successful in the other company. What you're trying to do is save face. What you're trying to do is you guys ran off CM Punk, who obviously had some sort of relationship with Jade Cargill. You saw Jade Cargill leave and completely take a hot shit on AEW without doing the AEW thing and directly insulting the other company. Jade Cargill did not come out and say AEW is bad, but in so many words, she came out and said WWE is supreme to the AEW product, and that hurt your feelings, and you don't know how to react to it. So what you do is, in turn, you come out and try to play the good guy in the situation. Like, look, we only want the best for everybody. If that was true, the main event of one of these last AEW pay-per-views would have been CM Punk versus Kenny Omega. You're full of shit. It's bullshit. You guys are a cancer to the industry, and I don't give a fuck if you say otherwise. But that's all I have for this week's show. Make sure to catch the Casual Wrestling Podcast that posts every Wednesday night, the Champ and the Chick that post every Sunday night, and the Monday Night Raw Post Show, which posts after Monday Night Raw every week. Hit the like button, share this episode with somebody you know, and until next time, keep it casual. I'm tapping out.
Step in the ring, if you ready, let's go. Hey, Casual Wrestling Community Show. You already know, talking WWE. Keep it rolling and hosted by Notorious NerdyD. Hey, dope show that you gon' find. Tune in cause it's online. Hit 'em with a figure 4 leg lock, power driver or clothesline. We bringing that heat like the show. But